Hey, Clemson family, the Tigers now own 21 ACC titles and are headed to another Orange Bowl where Cade Klubnik will make his first career start.
I'm Daniel Shirley. It's amazing to even think about that, but after what we saw Saturday night, there's no doubt that that's the direction this program should go.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 47 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. Thanks again to the thousands of you who've been making us one of your sources for analysis of the Tigers in 2022, both on the major podcast apps and at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Let's get straight to it because last night's game was really entertaining. I think surprisingly so. I don't think a lot of people expected Clemson to pull off a blowout victory over North Carolina. The defense did a nice job, and boy, how about that offense and the change in what Cade Klubnik was able to contribute?
It was startling, Bill, to see that. And as soon as Cade came in the game, things changed. And I don't know why they changed, what flipped the switch, but you can't deny that that's what happened Saturday night. DJ looked really shaky the first two drives. And then hats off to the coaching staff for making that change where it looked like they needed a spark. And they said, okay, we're going to go to Cade and see if he can get it done. And boy, did he get it done. I mean, the throws that he made, how the receivers stepped up for him and made plays for him. This looked like a totally different offense from what we saw last week and for a large part of this season.
Without a doubt, 20 of 24 for Klubnik with a few drops among those four incompletions, 279 yards, a touchdown on a really nicely placed ball to Davis Allen. This was the Cade Klubnik that opened everyone's eyes, not just in Clemson family, but nationally when he had that drive against Georgia Tech. Then the 11 weeks in the middle, when he did get into games, it was not pretty. So something clicked. Glad to see it. Love to see it. I mean, look, before last week's episode, you and I were wondering, well, what's he going to be made of? Is he going to be really a solid starter next year? For him to come out and have a game like this, and granted, North Carolina's been in a little bit of a funk lately, but this was just really, really top form. He just looked fabulous.
He did. He looked in control. He looked like he was confident in what he was doing. He looked like he knew where he wanted to go with the ball. And again, the guys had to make plays for him. The catches that the receivers made were top notch for most of the night. Now, there still were a couple of drops. You and I were debating whether one with Adam Randall was a drop or not. It looked like a drop to me, but it was at least a contested drop. There were a couple of clear drops, one from Cole Turner and one from Antonio Williams. But other than that, Cade Klubnik was on point, Bill. I mean, and really in charge of the offense and looked like he was confident, and it looked like the coaching staff was confident in him to run everything. The throwback pass worked to perfection. Him running the ball and scrambling out of the pocket worked to perfection. And then his throws were just really, really on target throughout the game. So, it's a small sample size. It's one game, but it certainly gives you a lot more confidence, more than what we had seen at any point throughout this season.
Totally agree. One of four really enjoyable developments last night for the Tigers. You mentioned Cole Turner. He's another one. How amazing is it that this guy finally gets significant action and has 101 yards receiving, and it's the first 100-yard game for any Clemson receiver this year?
Yeah, you could have got some good odds on that if you're a gambling fellow, which I'm not. But I was, shocked by that. And he makes the big catch to set up one of the touchdowns. Obviously, Cade has to put that ball on the money, which he did. But Cole's got to catch the ball. And that's been a problem for this receiving core for a lot of this season. And we saw it last week, how many drops there were in that game. So I thought Cole was terrific. He's got to get a little bit bigger. He's got to get a little bit stronger. But you could certainly see him going into next season having a bigger role on this offense. And then you look at that freshman receiving core with him, Antonio Williams, Adam Randall, who I think when he gets healthy can be a big piece of the puzzle. And all three of those guys feel like they're going to be important parts of this offense in 2023.
What was surprisingly unimportant last night was the rushing game. Only 76 yards for the Tigers. I really thought they would run the ball more. I think you did as well. But in a perfect example of the game plan last night, Will Shipley had more receiving yards than he did rushes with 4 catches.
Well, that's what people talk about balance. And it's not you have to, every game, you have to run it 40 and throw it 40 or whatever. It's the capability to do both. And you saw that last night. It looked like North Carolina was really selling out to stop the inside run. So what does Clemson do? They, a couple times they run the outside run, but really they took advantage of a depleted North Carolina defense and threw the ball on that secondary. Yeah, I thought they would run it. North Carolina's run defense has not been good all year, but you could see that the passing game was really going to work once Cade got in the game, and Clemson took advantage of that. So you like to see that kind of balance from this offense. And yeah, they got the ball to Shipley in a couple of different ways when maybe the running game wasn't working like you want it to. But when you win 39-10 and you're throwing the ball as well as they were, you can kind of live with that for one game here or there.
Anybody else remember Rodney Williams, that one fake handoff down by the goal line that totally freed Klubnik up to just run into the end zone uncontested, didn't even have to run? Sure brought back thoughts of the late 80s there for me, with Williams running the triple option back in the days of ancient offense.
Yeah, it's funny to even think about Clemson running the option with what it does now, but that's what it did when we were growing up, right? You had that I option, and that was Clemson's attack. It's certainly a different era, but it looks like Cade can do that if he needs to. And just a really impressive performance. Now, let's see it in the bowl game, but I think there's a lot of confidence with him going forward and then continue to grow. And just from everything we've heard about him, that's the kind of player he is. He's going to work, and he's going to continue to try to get better and not be satisfied, with one good game.
Let's talk about DJ Uiagalelei, and I want to start with just how awesome he was after the game. He was genuinely smiling and happy when he was interviewed afterward. I hope you saw that interview on Twitter or wherever you might be able to find it. Just hats off to how this guy approaches teamwork and how this guy approaches being a Clemson Tiger. He's been out there. We know the previous season he was out there hurt, a visible knee brace, a visible splint on his throwing hand. People were still knocking him, but he was fighting through because there were no other options. This year, I have my suspicions he was playing hurt. I think that's why we saw a change in his form, starting with that Syracuse game and really through the second half of the year. Dabo Swinney and his coaches really don't like to talk about injuries, don't like to give away any information that the other team might not be able to pick up on tape, and that's fine. That's a prerogative, and I respect that approach. I wonder what's next for him. I wonder if he'll be at the bowl game. I suspect he will be at the bowl game, but that's not the norm these days. And if this is the end for DJ at Clemson, what a way to go out as a true Tiger, just really being happy for the offense, really being happy for the win. That wasn't fake. That wasn't hollow talk. You could see it in his face. You could hear it in the tone of his voice that was in his heart.
Well, and you also saw him engaged during the game. That's the thing that impressed me, is he could have been pouting on the sideline. He could have been not paying attention to what's going on, thinking, hey, I'm not getting back in the game. But he was over there helping Cade. He was helping the offense. He was high-fiving teammates. When Nate Wiggins had the pick return for a touchdown, there's DJ high-fiving him as he's coming off the field. And look, has it worked out like you would want it to for him at quarterback? No. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that it has, especially after what we saw of him in his freshman season. It just has not worked, and there's a lot of reasons why. But you can't deny what he has meant to this program. You can't deny what he means to his teammates and the coaches. And I think you have to cheer for a guy like that. Look, even if he goes and plays somewhere else and transfers, I think a Clemson fan, you have to cheer for him. And if he tries to go to the NFL, you certainly cheer for him, because he's given you everything he's got for 3 years. And he's going to graduate coming up in a couple of weeks. Everything is a positive, I think, about him. Maybe outside of some of the results on the field, obviously, it hasn't been perfect, but he's been a good teammate. He's been a good Tiger. He's been a good representative of the university, and you and I are both alums, so we always think about that when maybe some other people don't. I just think you have to cheer for him moving forward with whatever's next for him in his career.
For sure. You see that with most other Tigers. Maybe not Tavian Feaster, who decided to go down I-26. But, you certainly see it with Chase Bryce, right? I mean, everywhere he's been, at Duke, at App State, the Tigers fans, you see them on social media supporting him. You've seen other guys get support elsewhere that they've been. You hope that he'll be healthy, right? Like, you didn't see that with Kelly Bryant when he went to Missouri. He ended up getting hurt and didn't really get a shot like he had envisioned out there, I don't think. If Uiagalelei goes elsewhere and succeeds, I don't think it's a referendum on anything about his time at Clemson because, like we said, he's been playing through injuries. He's kind of been the only option at times, the only realistic option for playing top-level competition. Definitely want to root for this guy. Definitely want to see him turn the corner. He's been nothing but a good individual. Also, reportedly dealt with some stuff off the field during his time here at Clemson, and you just want to see it all straighten out for him. Make sure you follow us on social media at Clemson Kickoff on Twitter and on Instagram. Let's talk about the defense, because the fourth thing that really emerged really, really well last night was the play of Nate Wiggins at corner. What a breakout night for him, and we've seen this guy really look sharp at times. I wouldn't say flashing. I'd say it's more than flash. He stood out on a regular basis. He's made some mistakes at times. I mean, that's life at cornerback, right? But what a night for him with the pick six, took him the length of the field, some key pass breakups, just absolutely starting to emerge.
And don't forget the blocked field goal too, because I think that was a huge part of this game. I thought there were two turning points in this game where it's 14-7. He blocks that field goal. It could have been 14-10. And then the other turning point was the pick six, where North Carolina's driving. It's a 14-point game. They could make it a 7-point game, and he makes the big play and returns it for the touchdown. They add the 2-point conversion, and then all of a sudden it's a 22-point game. And so I think you had to say there were two MVPs of this game last night, for me anyway, and he was one. Cade was the other. Maybe if you want to throw Jeremiah Trotter in there for a third, we can do that as well. But just the improvement from Wiggins from that Wake Forest game, because he was a disaster in that game. And to see what he has become since then, I think is a testament to all his hard work and what he's become on this team. And they said last night on the post game on the ACC network, he's the first player in the championship game history to have a blocked field goal and a defensive touchdown. And that says something.
Wiggins only had 2 tackles, and that's what you want out of a cornerback. Trotter had 9, including the 3 sacks. Carter matched him with 9, half a sack. Simpson, 8 tackles. Woodaz, 6 tackles. 4 leading tacklers for the game. Mukuba also had 5, and Jalyn Phillips also had 5. And RJ Mickens also had 5. So the safeties jumping in. Just a much better night for the defense overall. They did give up 400 yards, but they did rediscover red zone success. And what have we talked about Dabo Swinney's theory for defense? I think this is probably the 40th consecutive episode where we've used the bend don't break phrase. I got to find another way to say it, but that's how it worked out last night.
Well, and you look after the first drive, they gave up 3 points. I know they gave up a lot of yards, and I know that Crazy Daniel was texting you during the game, wanting everybody to be fired, but they gave up 3 points after the first drive. There were struggles on third down. They could not get off the field on third down for most of the game, and North Carolina took advantage of that and had some success there. They converted 9 third downs, which is way too many. But once they got in the red zone, they were 1 for 5 in scoring touchdowns. And you don't want to give up 5 red zone trips in one game. That's not great. But if you can hold them to 1 touchdown in those 5 trips, you're going to win a lot of those games.
Another quiet night for the front four statistically, but I think they did a very strong job of making sure that Drake Maye was corralled, right? Of limiting his options, of making him think of, and really setting the table for the linebackers to have that success. Tyler Davis led the group with 3 tackles. Murphy also had 3 tackles. Davis with a half a sack. Then you start running down the list. Peyton Page with 2. You get all the way down to Aurora with 1, Verzee with 1. KJ Henry didn't make a tackle, but was a presence all night long. Perfect example of them doing their jobs, making things happen up front, even though it may not have shown up on the stat sheet like you'd imagine for the group that calls itself the Avengers, right?
Well, there was pressure, right? But he's such a talented guy in the pocket, getting rid of the ball, maybe even scrambling at times, that you're not going to get a lot of sacks. And they didn't last night, other than Jeremiah Trotter pretty much got it done. But that's a piece of the puzzle there for this defense. And they got pressure on him, and they got the job done. You're right. There's not a lot of tackles there. There's not a lot of sacks, but they did their job last night, and that was good to see.
Yeah, hopefully Trotter's going to turn out a lot like his pops, as I said to someone last night. And hopefully he's going to have a big bowl game, and let's talk about that. The Tigers today, as we record this on Sunday, locking in a spot in the Orange Bowl as the ACC champion, and they will take on Tennessee. The Volunteers with a big bounce back season for the program and a place that really needed one, but they will come into this game without Heisman hopeful Hendon Hooker.
That Vols offense is going to be shorthanded in the Orange Bowl, and Joe Milton will get the start. He played against Vanderbilt. He played some in the South Carolina game when Hooker got hurt. Yeah, he was a starter at Michigan for a little bit. He was a starter at Tennessee last year to start the season, and then lost his job to Hooker. And we've seen how the offense has taken off with Hendon Hooker. That'll be an interesting matchup because he's got a big arm. He can make all the throws, as we like to say about draft prospects and those kinds of things. But can he handle the offense against the Clemson defense? I think it could be very similar to what we saw Saturday night, but I don't think he's as good as Drake Maye. And I don't think they are very physical offensively. They like to do a lot of things, but I don't know that they can line up and run the ball at you. So maybe you make them one-dimensional and then try to take that one dimension away from them.
Tennessee did lean on the run heavily against Vanderbilt, which is kind of suspicious because they were not a very run-oriented team all year long when Hooker was in there. I do think that Tennessee profiles very similarly overall to North Carolina. There are enough differences. I mean, Milton is not Drake Maye, so it'll be nice for the Tigers to have a few weeks to prepare, kind of get that North Carolina game out of their heads and not try to say, oh, they're just like them, we just have to do the same thing again. No, you really do have to do different preparations for each team, and maybe that's been part of the problem with the inconsistency in this team all year long for Clemson. It'll be interesting to see from both teams whether the transfer portal becomes a factor in who's available, but I sure intend to get myself down there to Miami to see this game in person, and I hope a lot of Tigers fans are going to do the same.
It should be fun. It's good to be back in a New Year's Six Bowl. I know it's not the playoff, but it is good to be back in the New Year's Six Bowl. It is good to have an ACC title again. We'll see who plays, right? Who opts out because they're going to the draft, who transfers. All that stuff is going to happen. And I would be shocked if everybody who's on the team decides to play in this bowl game. That's just the nature of college football right now. And that's okay. That's okay. You might not like it, but there's also going to be, I think, guys who say, no, I want my one last time with this team. And this is going to be really key for me. So, I'm sure that news will start to come out. The transfer portal opens Monday. We'll see who transfers, who doesn't, and we'll see who opts out of the game and who doesn't. But I'm excited to see Clemson play in one of those kinds of games again. Last year, it was great to be in the Cheez-It Bowl. And you and I had fun. It was a great night to go to Orlando and watch the game. But it's really cool to be back in the Orange Bowl again and play in one of those primetime showcase bowl games.
Maybe I'm partial to my home state. I'm not on the Chamber of Commerce or anything, but Florida, always a great place to visit if you ask me, and not too difficult to swing out of your way maybe a little bit, come see the theme parks as well, make a bigger trip of it than just one game. Signing day is about 2.5 weeks away. We'll start looking more at recruiting in the next few days. We may do some position breakdowns. We'll keep coming at you with 2 episodes a week. We will obviously preview that Orange Bowl game at the end of the month. I think Clemson really needed that win last night, though, to kind of reset the tone after the really disappointing 1-point loss to the in-state arch rival, whose name we shall not mention.
Yeah, you don't want to lose to South Carolina. especially for somebody who grew up in the state and has Gamecocks in his family and has friends who are Gamecocks. You don't want to lose that game. But this feels like a turning point, I believe, for this program. And we'll see if they can continue to head in the right direction coming up in the Orange Bowl.
It would be nice because I don't want to hear Rocky Top 45 times during that game like I did the last Peach Bowl I went to with a lot of my family. We are glad you found us, Clemson family. Subscribe to us, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Find us on all the major podcast apps. Follow us on your favorite one there. Social media at Clemson Kickoff, Twitter and Instagram, and our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. We'll keep you posted leading up to the bowl game and leading up to signing day before that. Well, until our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.